On today's episode, the Wizards have too many players contracted at the moment. How will they cut things down? What moves are still to come? We talk about that today here on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, this is Locked On Wizards, where you are part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Real quick, this episode is sponsored by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Alongside DC Sports content creating savant and credentialed media member for the Washington Wizards, it's Abdullah Ayubi, and I'm Ben Strober. I cover all things DC Sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. What a past couple days it has been covering sports here in the district. Abdullah, you and I, of course, here on the Wizards beat every single day, but there's been a lot going on outside of just the hardwood here in our nation's capital. Some new uniforms for the Commanders. We might touch on that later in this episode and relate that to the Wizards. NBA Cup schedule came out today, or not really the schedule, but who the Wizards will play up against in their group next year. We'll talk about that. And then Devin Booker getting a massive contract extension for another 2 years with the Phoenix Suns. What kind of implications does that have for the Washington Wizards? We'll touch all of that here in today's episode. But first, Abdullah, the Wizards currently with 17 players that are on the roster for the Wizards. 15 is the maximum for standard contracts. You get 3 two-ways as well. So the Wizards have some work to do for the remainder of the offseason regarding cutting down this roster from what it is. There's been a ton of moves already with the most recent trade yesterday where the Wizards acquire Branham and Wesley and a second-round pick, but still a lot more to come. Abdullah, who do you feel is next out of Washington?
I got to go with the man that I loved coming out of the 2020 NBA draft class, Corey Kispert, the guy at Gonzaga. I think a big reason why we've been talking about it for a while, this notion of Corey Kispert's days in DC being numbered, is one thing for sure. He wasn't a Will Dawkins guy. He was part of the Tommy Shepard regime, was a Tommy pick. And also, I think with the emergence of Keyshawn George last year, popping out of nowhere with his size and versatility, it just replaces Corey Kispert's three-point shooting, and now you have a three-point shooter in Trey Johnson who can be able to shoot it from three, and also Bub Carrington, and we already know what Keyshawn can do, and Alex Sarr's hopefully going to increase that three-point shot. So a guy in Corey Kispert, I think every NBA team needs a guy like him who can shoot the ball, and offensively he's gotten better from his rookie year to now, getting to the rim, being more crafty, but defensively is a liability. There's only so much you could do at that size, and if you're not that athletic, you can only shoot it from three. There's only so many minutes you can get out there on the NBA court, and you're the oldest out of all this young group, the Wiz kids that we have here. So it does make sense for him to be traded. Now, when it comes to compensation, I don't know what we can get, to be honest. I brought up the fact that you maybe want to trade him to Portland, maybe Golden State, teams that need a shooter. A second-round pick would be awesome. I think we've seen Will Dawkins trade for second-round picks and use the second-round picks via Cam Whitmore. So we'll just have to see, but I think he's a guy that could be definitely, I think, the last man standing from this whole Wizards regime of the previous regime. And I think if you're Will Dawkins, you just have to look at it and say, hey, we got to get the best value out of this guy. Many teams out there may think that, hey, what's the point? You give him that extension. But I think Corey Kispert does add some value to some NBA teams out there. But when it comes to his time in DC, I think it's basically over.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right about the idea of Kispert finding his way out of town, but it just would kind of be about finding a trade suitor for him. Portland, one that you mentioned. I think Golden State seemed like a strong candidate for someone that could use a player like Corey Kispert. However, now that the Wizards definitely no longer interested in Jonathan Kuminga after the Cam Whitmore deal, I'm not sure if Washington would have a lot of interest in trading with Golden State. I'm not sure what kind of compensation the Warriors would have to offer the Wizards here. Denver is another team that I think could actually use a player like Corey Kispert to shoot well off the bench. But the bottom line is I don't know what you could get for a player like Corey Kispert right now. But while we're still on the subject of players that might not be here, even the new guys, as of yesterday, Malachi Branham and Blake Wesley, I think either one of those two players, if not both, could be candidates to be waived from this team. And I know you make the argument that Dawkins makes the trade to pick up 2 players who were drafted in the first round 3 years ago. But this seems like a situation where one of these guys, because they are both on expiring deals, could end up getting waived. That could help the Wizards potentially try to save a little bit of money. Rashawn Holmes, another candidate to get waived. He has $250,000 of his contract guarantee at this point. If they waived him, that would free up a little bit of space for the Wizards to potentially make another move, because they really would have to. Because as it stands right now, the only 2 centers on the roster, and I'm using the word centers loosely here because Alex Sarr would technically be the only center here if Rashawn Holmes were waived from this team. And that'd be a big problem. One, because the uncertainty on how Alex Sarr can be flexed at his position, whether or not he can really play the 5 at this level, if the Wizards choose to develop him more playing the 4, where most people seem to think he's best suited. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense to have him just take the starting 5 role and not really have any depth behind him. I think if the Wizards were to waive Holmes or some other pieces, they'd probably have to go out there and find another backup center to come provide some depth at that position. I don't see that happening. I almost could see Holmes staying from that standpoint because they need the depth going forward. But there are a couple options that Abdullah, that you and I have floated around a little bit. Thomas Bryant, I think, is still actually on the market right here. Could see a reunion for him to come off the bench for this Wizards team and play center. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways the Wizards can go right here, but they're going to have to cut down to the 15-player limit. Tristan Vucevic is still not signed. He is a restricted free agent right now. I'm not sure if the Wizards are going to be able to retain him or not. He's someone that you and I are both extremely high on. Feel like there's not really any reason to not sign him back to the team at this point. I think he's someone that would give you really good minutes, whether or not you have him in a starting role or coming off the bench, because he's been on the 2-way contract for now the past 2 seasons. And when he's gotten his opportunities, he has shined pretty well for this Wizards team. And they obviously need somebody. They need a body, at least, at that position. And he's pretty good. Like, he actually really has a talented offensive game, and he could help out and take some of the weight off the shoulders of Alex Sarr.
And it's funny because I've mentioned it so many times on this channel. We really haven't had a second round pick like Tristan Vucevic. Last time, a guy who contributed like him, probably Thomas Satoransky. But TV, when given the minutes last season, you saw that he was producing offensively. He can shoot it from 3, can take it to the rim, has a nice mid-range shot. Obviously needs to get better defensively, needs to be more aggressive. A 7-footer needs to go in the paint more and put his back against a defender and make a move. But I think he deserves to be here in DC. I think the Wizards are going to bring him back. We'll just have to see how that works out. But we brought up the fact that bringing back Thomas Bryant, I thought the idea of bringing back Nick Richards, we made a video about that. Or sorry, not bringing back, but bringing him to Washington would be something that we could potentially do here in DC for the district. And I think also Bol is a guy I've loved for so long. So let's just bring that depth piece, because again, you can't go into the season, especially if you waive Rashawn Holmes' contract, with just Vucevic and Alex Sarr. It doesn't make any sense. You don't really have that much size. We already were bottom 5 in rebounding last year, so you can't go in another season bottom 3 in rebounding, because you just want to get better in a lot of categories. And I get it, you want to tank to a certain point where you keep that top 8 pick for next year, but at the end of the day, we want to be competitive. That's the one thing that we always talk about, the C word: competitive. And if you're losing the rebounding battle in paint every single night, it's going to be hard to win that 19.5 that we were talking about the previous episode.
I've got some more numbers for you here to kind of help break down and make some sense of the Wizards situation right now. The Wizards project 20 players right now, including the 2-ways. The 21 is the offseason maximum that you physically can have. So the Wizards theoretically could sign or add one more player right here, and that would be the offseason maximum before they really would have to start making any other moves at that point. So the Wizards are $15 million below the tax line right now, but it would go all the way up to $28.5 million if Rashawn Holmes is waived by the organization. They also do create $13.4 million in trade exceptions, with Kelly Olynyk being traded away just yesterday. So that could be used for more salary dumps. It's just crazy. Like, I'm looking at this graphic right now. In other notes, says access to $5.1 million biannual exception. The Wizards can increase the payroll in trades, can sign and trade for free agents. So the Wizards still have some money to work with. It's just a matter if they can create some space or not to eventually find somebody that they can sign to come off the bench as a center. And I know it's been intentional that they have left this hole in the roster pretty much to complete the ethical tank here. But I think you do need to have somebody be a depth piece at least.
I think all Wizards fans are thinking that right now. So we'll just have to see how it pans out. Let's see summer league. Let's see some of the young guys that can step up. Maybe we can find a diamond in the rough that could be depth at the forward or center position. We'll just have to see. But I know Will Dawkins is playing. I think it's going to be just fine.
NBA Cup. The Wizards have found out which group they'll be playing in, who they'll play next year in the NBA Cup. And I know it's not something that really matters that much to everyone, but the Wizards are the only team that has not won an NBA Cup game. Do we think that can change next year? We'll talk about that next year on Locked On Wizards. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control of your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. So one of the things I noticed when I started using Monarch Money was how much I spent on food delivery and some of the other things that I was currently buying at school, whether it was going to the drugstore to get soup or whatever when I was feeling sick. I was spending so much money all the time. And with Monarch Money, I was able to finally start budgeting and tracking what I was actually buying. So one goal that I was able to accomplish was saving a lot more money this month than I have really in the past 4 years that I was in school. It's all possible thanks to Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On Wizards. NBA Cup, something personally I really don't care about whatsoever. Ever since the NBA introduced the idea of the in-season tournament, whatever the heck it is, I don't understand it. Why the NBA chooses to decorate the court for the in-season tournament, but not the NBA Finals. That's beyond me.
That's so crazy.
I've got no idea. Well, the way that we connect this here is the Washington Wizards are the only team in the NBA to not win an NBA Cup game. They are 0-8 through the first two seasons that the NBA has done the in-season tournament. However, I'm very happy about that because the Wizards were not supposed to be winning games over the past 2 years. So that's good. That means the Wizards were doing something right those 2 years, clearly, if they were not winning those games. Now, next year, well, we are still in the process of the ethical tank to keep the top 8 protected pick. We talked about it yesterday with the opening line for the Wizards' regular season win total at 19.5. I do think the Wizards go slightly over that. I think they should be an improved team. I would really hope they do win over 18 games this year because you are in year 2 of some of your core guys that you drafted in the first round a year ago, Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, and Alex Sarr. You hope that you see enough development from those guys that it does translate to a couple more wins. You're hoping that Trey Johnson can solidify himself as a solid NBA player in year number 1, show flashes of potential. And then a couple other key pieces that you add here in Cam Whitmore, Dylan Jones, AJ Johnson from last season. What do those guys bring to the table? If you're a Wizards fan, obviously you want that top 8 protected pick, but I think if this team only did win 15 games last year, it would be a bit disappointing because it would show that there probably wasn't that much growth. Unless all these guys were playing insane and they were losing every single game somehow, despite insane efforts from all the young kids, I just don't see that happening. I don't see a possibility where that exists. I mean, it kind of go off on a tangent right there, talking about the NBA Cup, but I'd hope that the Wizards actually can pick up a win in the NBA Cup next year for the first time. So right now, we have found out who is in the group for the Wizards. That consists of the Pacers, Cavaliers, Hawks, and Raptors. Pacers are a team that are obviously going to be down, decimated with injury, despite playing in the NBA Finals this past season. Cleveland Cavaliers, obviously a very good team. Expect them to be good again next year. the Hawks, who have suddenly become a squad in the East, play 10 to 11 deep. That'll be tough. And then the Raptors are kind of just in the middle, if not a little bit worse for me. So maybe
That's
some
a winnable
potential.
game right there, man.
Yeah, maybe some potential for the Wizards there. The Hawks are a team that the Wizards actually beat twice last season, interestingly enough. So you never know right there. The Wizards also did sweep Denver. So take that with a grain of salt as well. Like when you win 18 games in a season, it's kind of funny that you play a team that's a playoff team out of the West twice and actually beat them both times. Never forget the Jordan Poole game winner. But anyways, you just want to see guys get better for the Wizards. Damn, I don't want to see them only win 18 games. And I know you need to be at least in the bottom 4 to guarantee that you get the top 8 protected pick. But I'm hoping that you can win a couple more games than that and be more competitive and still keep the top 8 protected pick. I know that is the overall goal for Will Dawkins in this front office next offseason. But damn, you need to compete. Wizards fans are tired of getting blown out by 30 every single game. And with the moves that have been made, the development that we've been preached to by this coaching staff, the front office, and the additions we've seen in the offseason, they better win more than 15 games. I will tell you that. I know anything over 18 is considered an improvement, but I would love to see them win 23, 24, 25 games. I think overall that'd be a very successful season for them if they do see true development out of these young players. I don't want them winning these games because Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum dropped combined 60 points. Not saying that's going to happen. I doubt it, but I don't want them winning games like that. That is not the way for me.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up. I saw on social media the practice and just recently everything going on with the new additions and whatnot. And for the Wiz kids, it just looks like a young college team right now. Like everyone's just so much energy from what I saw. At least it just feels like a whole new vibe here in DC. So I'm hoping that would translate into the regular season where I get it. Our young team, there's gonna be a lot of inefficiency, a lot of bumps. But at the end of the day, I think there is going to be improvement because there's just so much young talent on the squad that there has to be a guy that's going to pan out and be that superstar. We're hoping it's Trey Johnson, but maybe Bob Carrington takes that big stride in year 2. Alex Sarr, I think he can be a monster, a top 10 center in this league if he gets better defensively and offensively, polishes his game. So we'll have to see. But I agree with you. 23, 24 wins would be really, really good. You want to see more than 18. I know that the line was at 19 and a half, and I think they can hit that. It's just you can't be losing by 40 or 50 every night, especially at home. You got to be competitive. Every game has to be competitive. That's one thing for sure. And I agree with you. I don't want to see CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton, if they do win games, they'll be if they're the ones leading in points per game. I want to see the young guys take a step. Not saying that CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton aren't part of any vital role here in DC. Obviously, they play mentors, but we want to see more of the young guys because these are the guys that are going to be leading us to the promised land. So we'll see come regular season time, but I think everything's going to be just fine. It's going to be year 3 of this rebuild, and I think next year is when we'll really see that mass improvement.
Well, let's leave this up to the audience. For everyone that is watching to this point, one, thank you. We appreciate you as always. If you are watching right here, drop in the comments below how many wins do you expect from this Wizards team next year? If they are under a certain amount, and what number is that? Will you be concerned that there was a lack of development? I'm very interested into hearing what kind of expectations are expected from our fan base. And obviously, we have a sensible fan base. I know everyone who is watching this is intelligent and they understand the front office is probably not interested in losing the top 8 protected pick. But with that being said, what number is too low for you as a fan next year? Let us know down below.
Yeah, I think, again, there's no way you can do worse than 18 because I think you got better adding the draft class that you just had. And I think a year under the belt of Sarr, Bob Carrington, Keyshawn George, there's no way you do less than 18. And I think in not a perfect world, but if you hit 30, that to me is an A+ season. But I'm thinking 23 to 24 to 25.
I'll say this right now. If you're a betting man or woman and you're watching this video and you're ultra confident the Wizards win over 20 games next season, go on the FanDuel app right now and place that bet because you never know how that could change. They do shift lines pretty readily, I know. So probably get that in before it's too late if you're confident that it's going to happen. One thing that I want to touch on here in the next segment is Devin Booker getting a record-setting new contract with the Phoenix Suns. What kind of implications does that have for the Washington Wizards going forward? We tell you that next here on. Wow. Devin Booker, just wow, is really all I have to say right now because we just got the news literally around 20 minutes ago. Shams reported the massive contract extension for Devin Booker, an historic $145 million extension that keeps him in Phoenix as the franchise all-time leading scorer through 2030. He's getting paid more money annually than NFL players right now, Abdullah. And this is a guy that we were unsure if he had a Phoenix or a future in Phoenix anymore after the offseason that has transpired. KD parting ways with the Suns and getting traded to Houston. Booker is staying in the desert for absurd amounts of money. So now they're paying him and Beal insane amounts of coin.
I know their salary cap team is working overtime after that Devin Booker contract. To me, Ben, I really, really, really thought KD leaving made me think about the idea of Devin Booker potentially leaving Phoenix, but hey, money talks, and I think he wants to retire as a Phoenix Sun. I just don't understand the direction of the team. I really want to see what they do with Bradley Beal. I mean, it's still days after the NBA draft, and they still haven't bought him out. I know no team out there is that desperate to trade for him because, again, that contract is just atrocious. Shout out to Tommy Shepard for giving him that. But at the end of the day, the Phoenix Suns right now, the big reason why we're talking about this is because the pick swaps that we have with them in that Bradley Beal trade. And next year, you have the option to pick swap with them. I've seen predictions where they're a bottom 3 team in the West. And if we keep that top 8 pick, maybe we can use that pick swap. Who knows? We'll just have to see. But I don't know. At $72.5 million for Devin Booker, then that is just insane.
There's also pick swaps for other future years that we can reference here. 2028, another year where the Wizards will have the option to swap with Phoenix. And if you go on Fanspo and look at the Wizards draft compensation upcoming for the future, just look at 2028. There's like a 3-paragraph long thing explaining how the Wizards draft pick will work in 2028. It's just insanely ridiculous and confusing, but I guess it's not really relevant at this time to go through all that. But the Wizards are going to have the ability over the next couple of years to swap with Phoenix. However, I think Phoenix is trying to prove that they want to still be competitive here, despite Kevin Durant leaving. They've obviously, at the moment, Beal is still around. They signed the extension for Devin Booker to keep him in Phoenix long-term. And a couple of other pieces that Phoenix has added to the squad, the draft pick of Kaman Malawach, and Jalen Green comes over in the trade with Houston. They strike me as average, at least right now.
A
I think
play-in team, potentially?
They're a little bit unproven. And obviously they were unable to do anything last year, missed the playoffs completely with only 46 wins last year in the West. Given how good the West is, I still find it hard to believe that Phoenix is going to be able to keep up with everyone out there in that conference. Do they flirt with the play-in? Maybe. They might have the pieces to do so, but they're almost falling into the same trap that the Wizards did for so many years with Tommy Shepard, where there's not really a clear direction out there in the desert. And as a Wizards fan, this kind of frustrates me because I wish they just would have blown the damn thing up and started to bottom out so we could reap the benefits of those pick swaps. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility at this point, though, because I think Phoenix isn't really sure who it wants to be.
I agree. It would be awesome for them to blow it up and we use those draft picks and looking back and saying, hey, maybe we did win that Bradley Beal trade after all. Getting that contract was one thing, but getting a high draft pick out of it is another thing. I just don't know. Right now in the West, you got Denver, who got better this offseason. I think Houston's better than Phoenix. The Thunder just won a championship. The Timberwolves are better. Lakers is still up for debate. I don't know if LeBron's going to stay there. I think the roster is definitely questionable as well. I don't think adding DeAndre Ayton is going to make them a contender. But if you're Phoenix right now, would it make sense to be stuck in mediocrity? That's one thing that we emphasize here in Washington that we witnessed for so many years as a young fan. And I just don't think it's worth it. But we'll just have to see. Again, you give Devin Booker the bag. What you do with Bradley Beal is very, very interesting. Jalen Green on top of that. Common Malawatch. There are some solid pieces, but at the end of the day, it's nothing to take you over the top. And I think you have to press that red button before it's too late.
I hate mediocrity. Like, as a sports
It's
fan,
the worst position to be in sports, Ben, because again, if you're so average, you're not going to compete in the playoffs. But when it comes to the draft, you're going to have a mid pick, and that's something that we saw so much as Washington football fans, and now and with the Wizards too. But now it's different, which we love to see.
yeah, you have to find yourself in a position where you're able to draft a cornerstone player. And I think the Wizards are hopeful that there's going to be a potential cornerstone player if they don't already have it on the roster right now. It's way too early to tell, I think, with who Washington has right now. But with how stacked potentially that class will be next year, you have to always be keeping that on the back burner. Phoenix, I guess, not interested in that at the moment. I mean, if you think about it, if you're Phoenix, if you blew it up right here, even though you do have the pick swap rights with the Wizards, even if the Wizards or even if Phoenix does bottom out and the Wizards are able to somehow snag a slightly better pick, the Wizards are still going to be picking pretty high in the draft next year. So it's not like Phoenix would be missing out on that much. And knowing the Wizards, we never get lucky in the lottery, do we?
Never, ever, 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 ever.
So, like, if we were actually able to use the pick swap with Phoenix, the NBA would make sure that they don't win the lottery, because then we would take that pick. They'd have to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and
I'm
I
just,
think no, I agree with you.
I'm just saying stuff right now. Obviously, like, I could go off on a whole rant if I wanted to about how stupid I think the NBA lottery is, but
Yeah,
maybe
I want to ask you, Ben. Do you think they
maybe
should
I'm
do
just
how
salty.
how the NFL does it?
Like, a part of me says yes, but I also do understand the thinking for the NBA saying we don't want teams to tank every single year, because I think there'd be too much of it. I think too many teams would be desperately. I think every year in the NFL, you probably see 3 or 4 teams that are kind of aiming for the bottom toward the end of the year. It's pretty, like, cut and dry, though, because I feel like in the NFL, there's usually always, like, 3 quarterbacks that you'd expect to go in the top 5 or 6 picks of the draft. So most teams are kinda just primarily focused on being around in that range. I think if you're in the NFL, though, and you have a shot at the first pick, like, you're gonna go all in for it. I don't think the NBA should go to that. I think the lottery system they have right now is just very, very flawed. I don't understand how a team that finished second worst in the NBA or tied for second worst have better odds to pick sixth in the draft. I guess it's to punish teams that are tanking or whatever, but it's stupid.
And a team that was just in the NBA Finals not too long ago gets the #1 overall pick after their superstar gets traded to LA. It's just
How have the Spurs ended up with like a top 5 pick the past 3 years?
I just no luck here in Washington. And it sucks because I feel like DC, Ben, should be considered a big market just because how many people are here, the nation's capital, a melting pot. But again, it's just I don't know. I'm not comparing it to the LA Lakers of the world, the New York Knicks, the Clippers, all those big market teams, but I still think the district should have some respect, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the district is overlooked as a sports market, but we're coming. We are coming. We're on the come up right now. The Washington Wizards we're trying to make our way back to basketball glory. Never forget the buzz that was around this town when the Wizards were good. It's fun times, and hopefully we're going to see more of that coming here pretty soon. That wraps things up for today here on Locked On Wizards. One more episode to go before the Summer League begins on Friday night. We'll have some coverage of that. The Wizards take on the Suns, team that we just talked a lot about here in the past segment. That tips off at 9 p.m. Eastern time from Las Vegas. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there's no off season. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to know to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. For my co-host, Abdullah Ayubi, I'm Ben Strober, and we sign off here on Locked On Wizards. Go Wizards.